Hi there and welcome to the Tweak of the Week. I'm Tommy Larkin, owner and Chief Experience Officer of Optimal Movement, Fitness, and Yoga. To increase inner vitality, we need to have fluidity in the body, which starts with the hips and specifically the psoas. Welcome back, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. Let's continue on our track of opening the front of the body. In our last tweak, I showed you a quick back bend, which is great when standing up after sitting for a long period of time. This one move sets up our tweak for this week. But before we get into the depths of the movement, let's take a look at the anatomy of the hip and in particular the psoas muscle. Although we are looking at the psoas today and how to help it become longer and more flexible, we have to understand there are a number of other muscles responsible for helping externally rotate the upper legs. Generally speaking, the psoas is the agonist, the prime mover for hip rotation, as it is functionally the deepest of the hip flexors. However, what tends to happen is a strong psoas dominates external hip movements. This means that the psoas doesn't allow the other external hip rotation muscles to do their fair share of the work, leading to a muscle which continues to stay strong and effectively short. This leads to tight hips and lower back strain. So when you set for an extended period of time, if the psoas is strong and lacks constructive flexibility, then you get that cringe of discomfort when you stand up. This is because the psoas has been in a relaxed state in its relative shortest position. Add the fact the core abdominal muscles have most likely been relaxed while sitting as well, just amplifies the effect of support for the lower back. The result is that the lumbar vertebrae gets pulled against, leading to an adverse curve in the lower back. This creates a strain on this region, which we feel as a pain in the back. A tight psoas, coupled with weak abdominals, is the leading cause of general back pain. Now, this can happen to anyone, and if you have ever been in a long drive, you understand what I'm talking about. It's simply because the psoas has been in its happy state, which is where the hips and legs are in a relaxed, bent, and externally rotated position. This basically goes for all the external hip rotators as well. So when we stand up and straighten out the hips, we're moving from a very short length to essentially the longest one. Using our sitting example, beyond the obvious stationary sitting, when we go to stand up, the antagonist muscles, those which create the internal rotation, have been in a relaxed state as well. So what really happens here is that nothing is truly engaged. Therefore, there is no inner response for the body to say, oh, we're stretching these muscles, and now it's time to release and contract them. As an example, if we are standing in a bent knee version of Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana B, to open the leg out, we have to engage at a minimum the psoas, iliacus, sartorius, and part of the adductor magnus and gluteus medius. As a result, these internal hip flexors get stretched: the adductor longus, adductor brevis, pectineus, and gracilis. In turn, when we are ready to release the pose, the mind tells the internal hip flexors to contract, those ones I just mentioned, which creates a release for the external hip flexors which have been contracting. Now, of course, this is a simple manner of explaining the process of strengthening and stretching. There are additional muscles at work I haven't mentioned, plus other techniques and modalities which can be applied to gain a variety of overall benefits. But for today, this is what we need to understand. The psoas is the main connector between the torso and the hips. A strong psoas, which is a good thing to a point, is beneficial for supporting the hips and keeping stability between the torso and leg region. In addition, the psoas and the diaphragm are connected via several tendons, ligaments, and fascia. So a well-developed psoas is beneficial to our breathing and is directly related to our capacity to walk and breathe at the same time. However, a strong psoas can be a deterrent to having better mobility in our hips and body overall. A strong psoas can add adverse strain on the lumbar vertebrae and lead to additional restricted movement in the hip joint itself. This can mean more shallow breathing and difficulty walking upright. Furthermore, a strong, tight, and shorter psoas can affect our bowel movements, generally seen as being more constipated. By increasing the length of the psoas through productive stretching, we reduce the adverse effects on the lumbar spine and potentially improve our bowel movements, plus increase our capacity for more efficient breathing. These few advantages are just the tip of the iceberg on the benefits and effects of a healthy psoas muscle. So now let's take a look at the movements that I have for you today. All right, so come to standing on your mat, and I'm going to demonstrate this sideways on the first time. Second time I'll demonstrate it facing the camera for you. And I'm just going to talk you through what we're doing. So you're going to stand on the right foot in this case, and you're going to lift the left leg, you're going to bring it forward, okay? And then keeping the chest upright. So you want to stand in Tadasana and be upright. On an inhale, engage this left glute to bring the leg back and lift it up behind you. Now, you're going to get some hamstring engagement there, and that's perfectly fine. Just really work the inner leg to the foot and lift back through the leg to lift the crown of the head. And then you're going to exhale, come forward. And it's very important to bring the foot at least a little bit in front of the standing leg. Inhale, take the leg back and really work to fire up that glute to make the first action. Exhale, release. Inhale, draw back. We're going to do this 5 times. That's 3. Inhale, exhale, release. Inhale, engage. Really trying to make that glute fire first. Last time. Inhale, take the leg behind you. Exhale, release. And now this time, if it's possible for you, as you take the leg back, step back into a lunge and lower the knee. Now, if you need to come down to your hands and knees and then step 1 foot forward, make all the adjustments. If you need blanket under the knees for support, that's perfectly fine as well. Now, keep the back toes tucked, and now we get into our lines of energy in our legs. So you're going to have the reverse of what we normally do. So as you spread the toes, try to pick the feet and the knees up into the hips and away from the floor. Then on the next exhale, take the outer hips, spin them to the inner knees and down into the feet, so you feel like you're drawing if the legs were together, you're drawing them towards each other. So we want an internal rotation of neutrality in the legs here. Now, with right hand on the knee, left hand on the hip, lift the chest, and then exhale. It's important to understand the hips go forward. They will go towards the floor because of the angle of the legs and the hip joints, but think I'm drawing the hips forward, and this right hand helps keep the chest lifted. Right, so now you're going to probably find some stretch on the inner thigh a little bit region, right across the front of the hip towards the back. You may get a little bit of quad. I know for years when my quad was still tighter than my psoas, right, I had to get through that stretch there. So that's perfectly fine if you feel stretch in the front of the thigh and not in the hip. You will get there with time and practice, right? So now, trying to pick the feet back up towards the hips. Feel the inner legs move to the feet and then go forward in the hips again and lift the chest. And then for our last 3 breaths, we're going to inhale, reach the back leg arm. So in this case, it's the left arm towards the sky, and that gives you the top portion of the psoas in the stretch. Now, how deep your back bend is here is not important. It's the integrity of working in this position. Last breath. Good. Now inhale, release the left arm, and you can release the right hand too. You're going to rock back a little bit as you exhale, and if you can, step forward, lifting the back leg towards the chest, the left leg, and then release the foot. So that was an inhale, lift, and an exhale, lower down. Right? So now from the front, what it looks like is we're just going to stand on the left leg this time and pick up the right leg forward. Right? Now you're going to fire up that glute as you inhale and take it back. Exhale forward. Again, if you get hamstring, that's fine. Right? But you're working on trying to fire up the glute first, or at least have it be super, super strong and taking the leg behind you. Right? 2 more. And last one. Good. And now you're going to take that leg back, and if possible, again, step back into the lunge, lower the knee. right? And the hands come to the knee just to lift the chest. Right hand can go to the right hip, right? Back toes stay tucked. Now, soles of the feet draw back towards the hips and lift the belly. Spread the toes, and as the outer hips move to the inner knees down into the feet, you get that internal rotation, and then exhale, the hips go forward, right? Now, depending on each side is different, so I now, because my quadriceps are more open, I get a really good stretch on the inner thigh. I even get a little bit of the adductor that needs to stretch here that I mentioned earlier, right? And the chest is still lifting. And now we go back to the legs. Try to pick those feet up through the knees into the hips. That's going to pull the feet and the knee, back knee towards each other. And then feel the outer hips move to the inner knees down into the feet. That creates that internal rotation. With that, you should feel a broadness in the lower sacral region of the back of the hips. And then maybe you can go forward a little bit more, right? And then for our last 3 breaths, the right arm reaches up for the sky. And you can turn the palm whatever direction feels natural. I'm just demonstrating forward. It's very easy here. And you're getting that full extension across the front of the chest and the hip. Last breath, inhaling. Don't lose the action in the legs, and don't try to pull out. The chest and the arm are not trying to pull you out of the depth of the forward fold. And then exhale, release the arms. Inhale, rock back, and exhale. And then inhale, if you can, step forward, lift the knee. A little balance there sometimes. And exhale, lower the foot down. Great job, and I'll see you on the flip side. All right, super job. As a recap, the leg that's lifted, you're wanting to focus on that glute, drawing the leg back behind you, right? Don't worry if you get some strengthening in the hamstring as well. It does help extend the leg behind you, particularly standing up. Okay, so then the other thing to remember is to let the leg come past the standing leg so you have a full release of the glute and hamstring. Right? When you step back into the lunge, whether you're doing it in the flow or you need to come down to your hands and knees and adjust for that, after you set up the leg action, hold for 90 seconds, right? And if you're doing the arm lift overhead, that would be about the last 30 seconds, right? Now, if you need support for balance, like a chair to the side of the back leg or using the side of your bed, that's perfectly fine. Just leave out the arm motion and still hold for the 90 seconds. And I'd recommend doing that 2 times a day, all right, each side. So, wonderful, and I hope this is beneficial for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have an idea or action you'd like to see in the tweak of the week, send me an email at getoptimized@omfe.com. Have a friend who you think would benefit from these tweaks, forward them the email and tell them to join our mailing list. For words of wisdom and other tips, tricks, and happenings here at Optimal Movement Fitness and Yoga, check out our Instagram page at Om Fitness Yoga or on Facebook at Om Fitness and Yoga. Again, thank you for joining me today, and I'm sending you my deepest love, gratitude, and blessings. Be excellent to each other and have an amazing day.